The sun was hot above the red desert of Tarvon 6. Wind blew sharp dust across the open market. Creatures of many kinds shouted, traded, and moved through the stalls. But the crowd became silent when the guards arrived. They dragged her in chains. She was small, blue-skinned, with white hair falling across her tired face. Her name was Sira, and she had once been a healer in her village. Now, she was nothing. Her people had branded her a traitor. She had broken a sacred rule. She had saved a low-born child from dying. For that, they called her dangerous. She was to be punished, not by death. That was too simple. Instead, they gave her away to a human. A man who lived alone on the edge of the desert. A man they thought was cruel. The human stood waiting as the guards threw her to the ground. He was tall, with short brown hair and dust-covered clothes. His name was Jack Renner, a former engineer from Earth, now a scavenger and repairman on this forgotten planet. "She's yours," the alien guard said with a sneer. "Do whatever you want. She belongs to you now." Jack looked down at the girl. She did not cry. She did not beg. She simply stared at the ground, silent. "Chains?" he asked coldly. "She bites." One of the guards laughed. Jack didn't laugh. He walked forward and knelt beside her. Sira tensed. Her hands shook. Slightly. She expected pain, a kick, or worse. But Jack didn't hurt her. He pulled out a small tool from his belt and started working on the chains. Click, clack, one by one. They unlocked. Sira's eyes slowly lifted in shock. "You don't have to wear these anymore," Jack said, his voice calm. "Not with me." The guards blinked, confused. "Are you sure you want to waste her?" One asked Jack, ignored them. "Go." They left, laughing. "She won't last a week." Jack turned to her. "Can you walk?" She nodded slowly. Then, "Come on," he said, turning and walking toward his transport. It was an old hover truck, dusty and patched with metal from 5 different worlds. Sarah followed, unsure. The ride was quiet. She sat in the back, gripping her hands, still expecting something terrible to happen. But Jack said nothing. No orders. No cruel commands. Just silence and the hum of the engine. They arrived at a small outpost near the cliffs. A simple home, built from scrap, solar panels, and earth tech. Inside, it was clean. Strange machines lined the walls. Tools, wires, blinking lights. Jack opened a side door. "You can sleep here," he said. The room had a small bed, blankets, and even a plant in the corner. Not a cage. Not a prison. Sira looked at him, confused. "You're not going to command me?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "I didn't ask for a slave." Then ... "Why did you accept me?" He paused. "Because if I didn't, they'd give you to someone worse." She didn't know what to say. "I don't need a servant," he continued. "Just ... don't break things. And if you try to run, the desert will kill you faster than I ever could." She nodded. "Double quotes rest," he said. "Dinner is in 2 hours." He left, and the door remained open. Sira stood there, frozen. What kind of punishment was this? No shouting, no chains, no orders to kneel. She sat on the bed, feeling its softness. She looked at her hands, still red from the chains. Why was this human different? Back in her village, humans were called beasts. Cold, violent, heartless. But this one, he was strange. That night she sat at the table with him. He served her food. Real food. Warm, simple stew. "You're quiet," he said. "I don't understand." "You?" "Yeah," Jack replied. "I don't understand myself either." She looked down at the food, then at him. "Why are you kind to me?" He didn't answer right away. Then softly, "Because someone once saved me when I was broken." Maybe it's my turn. Sierra felt something stir in her chest. Fear. Hope. She wasn't sure, but deep inside, something whispered this punishment might not be the end. It could be the beginning. Sierra woke early. The desert wind blew softly against the small window in her room. She sat up slowly, expecting pain. But nothing hurt. No one shouted. No chains pulled her from sleep. She was still free, or at least not chained. She stepped out of the room carefully. The hallway was quiet. She walked slowly through Jack's strange home. The machines blinked quietly, like they were breathing in the main room. She saw him. Jack was at his workbench, fixing a small broken droid. He didn't turn when she entered. "Food's on the table," he said, calm and steady. Sierra looked to the table. A bowl of porridge sat there, warm and untouched. She walked toward it like a mouse approaching a trap. She picked up the spoon and ate one. Small bite, it was real. She looked at Jack. "Why do you feed me?" He didn't look up. "Because you're alive." That answer made no sense to her. Later, that day, she sat outside. The sun was too bright, but she didn't want to stay in the room. She needed to see the open land to remind herself this wasn't a cage. Jack came outside with some tools. He was fixing a power line nearby. She watched. Silently. "You can sit in the shade," he told her. "I want to feel the air," she said. He nodded. She didn't expect that. No command, no force. He worked quietly, and she watched his hands steady, skilled. She noticed a long scar on his arm, old and faded. She wanted to ask about it, but didn't. At night, Sierra lay awake. The bed was soft. The walls didn't close in, but her heart still raced. Her people had told her many things about humans, that they were violent, that they used others, that they broke those weaker than them. But Jack had not touched her, had not yelled, had not even asked her to clean. She didn't understand it. So the next morning, she made a decision. She would run. She left at dawn, barefoot, silent as the wind. The desert was endless, but she walked fast. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. All she knew was that this peace, this quiet tit, had to be fake. It would end. And she didn't want to wait for that pain to return. Better to escape now. But after only an hour, the heat became too much. Her feet burned, her throat dried. The desert was a monster with no teeth, just endless thirst. She fell, sand scraped. Her knees, she gasped, coughing. Her vision blurred. And then, a shadow Jack. He stood above her, hands on his hips. "Are you done running?" She looked up at him, too weak to answer. He didn't scold her. He didn't shout. He knelt beside her and offered water. She hesitated. "Drink," he said. She drank. He picked her up gently, carried her back to the truck, and drove her home. Back inside, she lay on the bed. Her body shook from the heat. Jack placed a wet cloth on her forehead. "Why did you follow me?" She whispered. He answered, "Because I knew you'd try." "You were waiting?" "Yeah, I've seen fear before. I know the signs." Sierra closed her eyes. "You didn't have to come." "I know." "Then why?" Jack sat beside her. "Because I've run before, too." Those words stayed in her heart. That night, she didn't eat much. But she sat at the table again. Jack said nothing about the escape. He didn't mention it at all, and somehow, that was worse than punishment. "You confuse me," she said. "Good," Jack replied. "Means you're thinking you should have beaten me. Do you want to be beaten?" "No." "Then why expect it?" She looked down. "Because that's what they did." "I'm not them." Silence. Then Jack stood. "Sleep well, Sierra." She nodded. As he left the room, she whispered, "Thank you." He paused, but didn't look back. "You're welcome." Later that night, As Sira stared at the stars from her window, she felt something strange. Not fear, not sadness. Something warm. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was the first small seed of trust, and in a world that had taken everything from her. That feeling was more powerful than anything else. Days passed. Sira no longer stayed locked in her room. She began walking around the small outpost, watching Jack fix machines and repair broken tech from old worlds. He never asked her to help. He never told her what to do. But one morning, she quietly picked up a small part from the table and handed it to him. Jack looked at her, a little surprised. Then he smiled, just a little. "Thanks," he said. She nodded and stood beside him, watching closely as he repaired a damaged drone. It was old and rusted, but Jack treated it like it still had value. Like it deserved another chance. Sira wondered, was that how he saw her? That evening, Sira cooked a simple meal. Just warm root stew and flatbread she had learned to make long ago. Jack tasted it and raised an eyebrow. "You made this?" She nodded. "It's better than mine," he said. A small smile touched her lips. It was the first time she had smiled in many months. Sira started helping more. She swept the floors, washed the tools, and even fed the animals outside. There were 3 desert runners, small, chicken-like creatures. Jack kept 4 eggs. One of them, the smallest one, liked her, followed her around, and pecked at her toes. Jack laughed when he saw it. "Guess you made a friend." Sira bent down and petted the creature gently. "At least someone here isn't afraid of me." Jack looked at her for a moment. "I'm not afraid of you." She looked up. "You're not?" He shook his head. "You've been through a lot. I see it. But I don't fear broken things. I fix them." Her eyes widened. "I'm not broken," she said. Jack didn't reply right away. "No," he finally said. "You're not. But someone tried to break you." One afternoon, Jack was working on a broken solar converter. It was heavy, and sparks flew as he tried to adjust the wiring. Sira walked over and handed him a cooling clamp before he asked. He blinked. "You really are watching me closely." "I learn fast," she said softly. "I can see that." He paused and added, "You don't have to do this. I want to." Kay looked at her, then nodded. Okay, that was all. No long speeches, just quiet understanding. But not everything was perfect. One night, a loud bang echoed outside. Sira jumped up from her bed and rushed out. Jack was at the door, weapon in hand. A trader's hover truck had broken down nearby. 3 men stood beside it, one holding a bottle, clearly drunk. They laughed when they saw Sira behind Jack. "Well, well," one of them sneered. "Didn't know you were into alien pets, Jack?" Sira stepped back, her heart racing. "She cooked too," another joked. "Or just warm your bed." Jack's jaw tightened. "Leave." The first man laughed again. "Relax, we're just admiring your taste." Jack pointed his blaster at the ground. "Near their feet, I said leave." The men raised their hands. All right, no need to get angry." They got in their truck and sped off. Jack turned back to Sira. She stood frozen. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, but her hands were shaking. He didn't touch her. He just said, "You're not a thing. Don't let them make you feel like one." Later, she sat at the edge of the outpost, looking at the stars. Jack sat beside her after some time. "I thought you'd send me away," she said quietly. "Why would I?" "Because of what they said." "Because I was given to you like a tool." Jack sighed. "You were given to me as a punishment, but yours mine. They thought I'd treat you like garbage. Why didn't you?" He looked up at the stars. "Because someone once saved me, too. And maybe I know what it feels like to be treated like less." Sira looked at him, her voice soft. Do you still feel that way? Jack gave a faint smile. Not anymore. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Syrah said something she hadn't said in years. Thank you. For seeing me. Jack didn't respond right away. But when he did, it wasn't with words. He simply reached over and gently handed her a blanket, soft, warm and clean. In that moment, Syrah felt something new. Not fear, not pain, but safety, real, quiet safety, and for someone who had lived in fear her whole life. That was the beginning of something powerful. A few weeks had passed. Syrah now walked freely around the outpost. She wasn't a prisoner anymore. She cleaned the tools, cooked meals, and sometimes laughed softly when Jack made bad jokes. He didn't treat her like a slave, or even like a guest. He treated her like someone who mattered. Every evening, they sat on the rooftop to watch the desert sun sink behind the hills. The sky turned gold, then orange, then deep purple. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. But that peaceful life didn't last. One afternoon, the hum of engines broke the silence. Two large hover trucks came rolling across the sand, kicking up dust behind them. Jack stood up from his workbench and narrowed his eyes. Stay inside, he told Syrah. She nodded and backed away, heart beating fast. Her hands trembled without reason. The truck stopped just outside the outpost. 4 traders jumped out. All wore rough armor and smelled like smoke and cheap spice. Jack, one of them, shouted with a grin. Still alive in this trash pile? Jack forced a smile. Barely, Corin. They laughed and clapped his shoulder hard. Syrah watched from the doorway, hiding behind a wall. One of the traders noticed her. Hey, what's that? He asked, nodding in her direction. That's none of your business, Jack said flatly. But they didn't listen. Corin walked forward and leaned to look around the corner. Is that, a Zyran girl, in your place? Since when did you start collecting aliens? Syrah stepped back quickly, fear returning to her face. Jack stepped between them. Back off. Another man chuckled. Relax. We're just admiring. She for sale. No, Jack snapped. Corin smiled darkly. Come on. You always said you hated company. Now you've got a blue-skinned beauty in your house. Don't act like you're not enjoying the deal. I said she's not for sale. One of the others laughed. What? You married her or something? That joke made the others burst out laughing. Syrah felt something break inside her seam. Fear. Memories of cruel voices from her past. She wanted to run and hide. But something else stopped her. Jack. He didn't laugh. He didn't joke. Instead, he stood tall and calm. She's not my property, he said. She's free to leave any time. She just hasn't. The laughter died. One of the traders muttered, You're a fool. Jack stepped closer. Then leave my land. The traders hesitated, then grumbled and walked back to their trucks. You'll regret this, one warned. Jack didn't answer. He simply stood and watched until they drove away. That night, Syrah sat quietly on the rooftop. She didn't touch her food. Her eyes stared at the stars. Empty and far away. Jack brought her a warm drink and sat beside her. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't laugh, she whispered. I never would. She looked down. They see me as something to sell. Like a tool? A thing. They're wrong, Syrah turned to him. Why didn't you sell me, Jack? You could have. Could have made credits, gotten better gear, a newer ship, anything. He shook his head. Because I don't sell people. Because you're not a thing. I was given to you like one. Jack looked at her, serious now. You were given to me as punishment, remember? They thought giving you to a human was cruel. She nodded slowly. They thought I would hurt you. Thought I would break you, but you didn't. Jack's voice was calm. Because you didn't deserve that. And because, ... I've been broken too. They sat together in silence. The wind was gentle. Then Sierra asked, almost in a whisper, "Do I belong here, Jack?" He looked at her with soft eyes. "You belong wherever you feel safe." The next morning, Jack woke up and found the kitchen clean. The floor swept and a small metal sculpture sitting on his workbench. It was shaped like a bird, simple but delicate. Sierra was outside. Feeding the animals, Jack walked out and held up the sculpture. "This, yours." She nodded. "I made it from scraps. It's beautiful. It's for you." Jack smiled. "Why?" "Because you made me feel like I'm not broken anymore." That night, as they sat on the rooftop again, Sierra looked up at the stars and spoke gently. "I could leave, you know." "I know," Jack replied, "but I don't want to." He turned to her. "Why not?" "Because, for the first time in my life, I feel free." The sun was just rising when the warning sensor beeped. Jack looked up from his morning tea, narrowing his eyes. The red blinking light meant something or someone was coming. Not traders. Not merchants, something else. Sierra was outside, watering the small plants she had helped grow. Jack stepped out, calm but alert. "Sierra," he said. She looked up, smiling. "Yes, we have company." Her smile disappeared. Who? Not sure yet. But deep down, Jack had a feeling. And Sierra. She already knew. They appeared just after sunrise. A sleek black hovercraft approached fast, its engines silent but sharp. It was not a trader's vehicle. It was military. Zyran military. Sierra's breath caught. Her legs felt weak. Jack placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Go inside, but please." She nodded and stepped back slowly. The craft stopped, and two figures stepped out. One wore red armor, the other dark gray robes with silver lining. The robed one stepped forward first. A tall Zyran man with sharp blue eyes. "Sierra," he said coldly. "You disgraced your name. We're here to return you." Jack stepped forward. "She doesn't belong to you. She is Zyran property," the man snapped. "Her punishment was to be given to a human. You. But instead of treating her properly, you gave her false hope." Jack's voice was steady. "She's not a slave. She's our law." "Your law means nothing here." The armored soldier raised his weapon. "Return the girl, or face the punishment yourself." Inside the house, Sierra stood near the door, shaking. She heard everything. The voices, the threat. Her name said like poison they had come back for her. She thought this was over. She thought she was free, but freedom, it seemed, wasn't something her people would ever allow, unless ... unless she chose to fight for it. She stepped out. Jack turned in shock. Sierra no, but she walked past him, chin high, eyes cold. She faced the Zyran officer. "You call me a disgrace," she said. "But I saved a child's life. That is not shame. That is honor." The officer snarled. "You broke our code, and you broke my spirit. You broke others. You hide behind rules to keep the weak in chains." The soldier stepped forward, lifting his blaster. "You are still Zyran. You come with us now." Jack stepped in front of her. "You'll go through me first." The officer gave a cruel laugh. "We knew you'd say that." Without warning, the soldier fired. Jack moved fast, but not fast enough. The blast hit his shoulder, knocking him to the ground. "Jack!" Sierra screamed. Blood stained the sand. She fell beside him. His face was tight with pain. But he held her hand. "Run," he gasped. But she didn't run. She stood, face to face with the soldier who shot him. No weapons, no armor, just fury. "I am not your slave," she said. I am not your shame. I am not your tool. She raised her hand. Her fingers glowed faintly, something forgotten. A healing power, but not just that. Energy. Sirens had once used it to protect life. Now, she used it to defend her own. A flash of blue light shot from her palm, hitting the soldier's weapon and knocking it from his hand. The soldier stumbled back, stunned. You still have the gift? The officer asked in disbelief. I never lost it, she said. You just tried to bury it. The officer raised his own weapon butt before he could fire. The small desert runner birds rushed out of nowhere, pecking at his legs. They had followed Sira. They remembered her kindness. The moment was enough. She moved fast, slamming the weapon from his hand and pointing it at him. I'm not afraid anymore, she said. The officer stared at her. Then he smiled darkly. You'll regret this. No, she whispered. I already regret letting you control me for so long. The officer called off the soldier. They stepped back into the craft, glaring. We will return, he promised. Sira raised the blaster. Next time, I won't show mercy. The craft lifted and vanished into the sky. She dropped the weapon and ran back to Jack. He was bleeding, but awake. You stood up, he whispered. She nodded, eyes full of tears. Because you taught me how. That night, she stayed by his side, healing his wound the best she could. Her hands glowed softly, and warmth passed from her skin to his. You saved me, he said. No, she replied, brushing his hair back. You saved me first. And finally, her voice broke as she whispered, I choose to stay, Jack. Not because I must, but because I want to. Jack's shoulder healed slowly. Sira stayed close to him every day, preparing meals, changing his bandages, and using her glowing hands to speed up the healing. She had never used her gift like this before, not fully. But now, it came naturally. I didn't know you had powers, Jack said one evening, lying back on the bed. Sira smiled softly. All Sirens have a gift. Mine was for healing, but they told me to hide it. Why? Because healing makes others strong, and strong people ask questions. Jack nodded. He understood more than she knew. Jack's strength returned, day by day. But so did the danger. Sira knew the Sirens would come back. They never gave up what they claimed as theirs. She had stood up to them once, but next time they might bring more soldiers, bigger weapons. She couldn't let that happen, so she trained. Every morning, she ran across the sand with the desert sun on her back. She learned to hold Jack's tools like weapons. She studied how the blaster worked, how to fire it, how to disable it. Jack watched her with careful eyes. You're serious about this? He said. I have to be, she replied. He walked over and handed her a small shock baton. What's this? Better than a frying pan, he said with a grin. Sira laughed, and it was the first real laugh she had ever made since coming to his outpost. Later that week, a local merchant named Doro visited. He had seen the smoke from the last attack and came to check in. I heard the Sirens were here, he said nervously. They're searching all nearby settlements for you, Sira. They won't find me, she said calmly. Doro looked uneasy. You should run. Leave this place. But Jack shook his head. No, we're done running. That night, Sira sat under the stars with Jack, the fire crackling beside them. Why do you still stay? Jack asked. Sira looked up, her eyes reflecting the flames. Because this is the only place where I am seen. Jack didn't speak. But the way he looked at her said everything. She was no longer just a girl he had taken in. She was his equal. The next morning, a sharp sound woke them. A single blast. Then silence. Sira grabbed the blaster and ran outside. Smoke rose in the distance. A nearby settlement had been hit. Jack stood beside her, now strong enough to walk without pain. They're making an example. Sierra looked at him. We can't let them scare others. Not again. He nodded. Then we fight. They packed supplies. Jack loaded the small hoverbike with tools and gear. Sierra carried her shock baton, a blaster, and the healing crystal her mother had once given her. They rode across the desert to the nearby village. The air was hot, but the fear in her chest was colder than ice. They found the villagers huddled together. A house had been burned. A father injured, a child missing. Sierra knelt and touched the father's chest. Her hands glowed, and the man gasped. Life returning to his face. The villagers stared. She's one of them. A voice whispered, "No." The father said weakly, "She saved me." That night, Sierra stood before the people. "They will come again," she said. "They will burn more homes, take more children. But we don't have to be afraid." "And what can we do?" someone asked. "We stand," she said. "We fight, not with hate, but with strength, with unity." An old woman stood. "You carry light in your hands, child. If you lead, I will follow." One by one, others agreed. The village began to prepare. Days passed. Jack taught them how to set traps, build defenses, and use old tech to block signals. Sierra trained the young to stay calm, to protect the weak. And when the Zyrans returned, they found something they didn't expect. Not fear, not silence, but a wall of people standing tall with Sierra at the front. The Zyran officer stepped out of his craft again. The same one who had tried to take her. "You're making this worse for yourself," he said. "You think these people will protect you?" "They already have," Sierra replied. He raised his hand. Attack. Blasters fired. Air. But this time, Sierra didn't run. She moved fast, dodging fire and striking with her baton. The villagers launched traps that Jack had built. 2 soldiers were knocked out before they even reached the walls. Jack fired from above, hitting the engines of one hovercraft. It spun out and crashed nearby. The officer stepped forward, weapon ready, but Sierra was faster. She hit his hand, knocked the weapon away, and stood over him. "Do it," he hissed. "Finish me." Sierra looked down, then stepped back. "No, I'm not like you." She turned away. The officer screamed as he was pulled into custody by the villagers. The fight was over. The people cheered. They surrounded Sierra and Jack, shouting her name. She smiled, exhausted, bruised, but alive. She had fought for her freedom and won. That night, by the fire, Jack held her hand. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she replied. Then she looked into his eyes. "I have one question left." He smiled. "Ask. If I choose to stay here forever, not just at the outpost, but with you, will you accept me?" Jack looked at her, his voice soft. "I already have." The desert winds were quiet that morning. For the first time in months, there were no alarms, no shouts, and no danger in the air. The sun rose over the sand with soft light, painting the sky in gold. Birds chirped near the edge of the outpost. Sierra stood at the top of the hill, looking down at the village below. Children ran and laughed in the dusty paths. Traders moved in and out peacefully. There was life again. She had helped bring that peace. Behind her, Jack climbed the hill, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "You left early," he said with a smile. "I wanted to see it again," Sierra replied, her eyes fixed on the village. "To remind myself that this is real." Jack stood beside her and unwrapped the bundle. Inside was a necklace. A simple one, just a polished silver wire holding a small crystal. Not fancy, not expensive, but full of meaning. Sierra looked at it and blinked slowly. "Is that for me?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, I found the crystal in a broken ship years ago. I didn't know what to do with it, until now. She took it gently in her hand. It's beautiful. So are you, he said, without hesitation. Sierra looked at him, surprised. Jack rubbed the back of his neck, nervous now. I've been thinking. We've been through a lot. Fought together, built something together. And I never thought I'd say this, but I don't want to do any of it without you. She tilted her head, curious. What are you trying to say? Jack took a deep breath. Stay with me. Not just here. Not just for now, but always. Be my partner. My wife. Sierra's eyes widened. She didn't speak at first. Her fingers closed around the necklace, holding it tight. Then slowly, a tear rolled down her cheek. Jack panicked. Was that a bad idea? She laughed softly. No, Jack, it's the best thing anyone's ever asked me. Then why are you crying? Because no one has ever wanted me. Not really. Not for who I am. Jack gently reached out and held her hand. I do. Sierra looked into his eyes, strong and steady. And then she nodded. Yes, she whispered. I'll stay. I'll marry you. Jack's smile broke across his face like sunlight. He leaned forward and touched his forehead gently to hers. The wind blew around them, warm and kind. That evening, the village gathered. There was no big ceremony, no royal guests. Just people who had once feared her. Now cheering for her, Sierra wore a white robe, simple but clean. Jack wore his best shirt, still old, still patched, but ironed for the first time in years. An elder spoke the words. They didn't follow any one tradition, just words from the heart. Do you choose each other freely? The elder asked. Jack said yes. Sierra said yes. The crowd clapped and cheered. Children threw flower petals in the air. The desert runners danced around their feet. They were husband and wife now. Later that night, they sat together by the fire, away from the crowd. Sierra rested her head on Jack's shoulder. Do you ever miss your old life? She asked. Jack thought for a moment. Sometimes. But I was alone then. I had no one to talk to, no one to share sunsets with, no one to trust. She smiled. I know that feeling. And now? He asked. She turned to face him. Now I have a place, a name, a choice. Jack held her close. You were never a slave to me, Sierra. And you were never a captor to me, she said. They kissed gently, under the stars. Weeks passed. Sierra became a leader in the village. She taught healing. She helped build new shelters. She worked beside the people, not above them. She earned their respect, not through power, but through kindness. Jack repaired more than machines now. He fixed walls, water lines, old tech. But he also fixed hearts. He reminded people that even strangers could become family. Their love became a symbol. The alien girl who was meant to be punished. The human man who was meant to break her. They became something no one expected. Partners equals home. One night, a child asked Sierra, "Is it true you were once a slave?" She knelt down and smiled gently. Yes. Were you scared? Very. Then. How did you become a queen? Sierra chuckled. Because someone saw me and didn't look away. The child looked confused. That's all it took. Sierra nodded. That's where it starts. And far across the stars, in places where cruelty still ruled and chains still clinked in dark halls. Stories of a Zyran. Girl who became a queen through love and strength began to spread. Some refused to believe it, but others began to hope.